I like the way you make me laugh. I like the funny things you do. You got a style that's all your own. I like the sprite in you. You make me want to smile. You know you make me sparkle too. You're such a kick to have around. I like the sprite in you.
Sprite, the only one with Lyman. The unexpected twist that makes us different, livelier, special.
I like the sprite in you.
Some breads look like D'Italiano, but they don't taste like D'Italiano. D'Italiano has the taste and texture of real Italian bread. It even has real sesame seeds. So it's the perfect bread for Italian ham, pepperoni, sausage and peppers, even such old Italian favorites as corned beef, tuna fish, and American cheese. So if you want a hearty sliced bread that gives any food a delicious Italian accent, insist on real D'Italiano, only from Tasty.
Eyewitness Sports. Find it on 5.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Strand, filling in for Bob Bruce, who is on vacation this week. Welcome to Twin Cities Live. We are talking about maternity leave.
At first, I thought it was just me that it was happening to. And as I began to talk to other women and find out that this was happening to thousands of women, and I said, you know, something needs to be done about this.
A, B, C, D. Is that a D?
That is a D. I'm fighting for you. I said, I'm fighting so that when you're grown, if you choose and if you decide to get married and have a baby, be a mother, you won't lose your job. You have a job to return to.
Lillian Garland won her fight last January when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a state can require an employer to provide special protection for pregnant workers. Though it was a landmark decision, it only applies to the state of California. Now, Minnesota has no such law. Teresa, Nan, and Debbie have found that here, having a baby could mean an end to your career. Should there be a law giving women months off to care for their infant and then allowing them to return to the same position? Or would that discourage employers from hiring women of childbearing age because they may be viewed as expensive employees? One bill currently in the Minnesota legislature would allow lengthy time off for not only mothers, but for the fathers of newborns. Dave has taken parental leave and says it has been a tremendous opportunity to learn about his child. Can the law guarantee your right to be a parent without losing your job? Should a woman have to choose between being a mother and working? And how much leave is too much leave for a company to remain productive? We'll talk about all of this next on Twin Cities Live. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to all of you at home, and good morning to the 4 new parents who are joining us here today, all of them recently becoming parents. And Teresa, let me ask you first of all, you had a career as a flight attendant.
Correct.
You carried that through your pregnancy. Did you intend to return to work, and what happened?
I intended on going back to work up until the very last day. I took 5 months after first of all, I had my 5 months leave. And then I was to return to work 6 weeks after the baby was born. I was able to extend it 6 more weeks after that, which I did. And then after that, that was a total of 3 months after the baby was born. Then I was to return to work, and I just couldn't return. I had to either make the decision of returning or resigning, and I chose to resign.
Why?
I chose to resign because I just didn't feel that the 3 months was enough time after the baby was born. I was able to take my maternity leave the day I found out I was pregnant if I would have chose to. So that would have been a total of 9 months. And so what I should have done is taken the 9 months after, but the company that I worked for was not willing to allow me to take that much time after.
So what happened is that you did not anticipate what you were going to be experiencing and what your desires really were before you had the baby.
Exactly.
And things changed after you had the
Exactly.
baby. Nan, tell us about your story.
Sure. I worked for a small law firm, and when I found out that I was pregnant, I went into my immediate supervisor and I said, I want to arrange for a leave. They'd never encountered this before. And I said, I would like to take 3 months leave. And we agreed that that would be all right. I left my position approximately 3 weeks before my baby was born because of complications with my pregnancy. During the time that I was off work, I had a baby, and I got several calls from my office. They would call to consult about cases that were ongoing that I'd been involved with, or matters on which I had special expertise. When the time came for me to return to work, I called the office a week prior to actually going back in the door and said, okay, is there anything you want me to do to get things going again? And they said, oh, you're not coming back. We've hired someone in your place, which was news to me. And during that time, my name was still on the door, my name was still on the stationery.
And they had called you at home to consult with you about cases during this time?
Frequently.
So this was a complete surprise to you. Had you lined up daycare to return to work?
I had daycare all lined up. I had scrambled around trying to find infant daycare in the Twin Cities. Extremely difficult. I finally found adequate daycare for my, at that point, 8-week-old child, and was all set to go back to work, and there was no place for me to go. My things were still in the office. The drawers were filled with my personal items. I had to go and clean them out. Someone else was sitting at my desk.
Was it your impression that it was because you had chosen to leave and have a baby that your job had disappeared?
Oh, yes. Up to that time, my relationship with the firm had been very good. They had asked me to do things for them that were not part of my cases. I argued a case in front of the Supreme Court for the firm that was not my case. It belonged to someone else, but they asked me to prepare the brief, and they asked me to do the oral argument, which I did. Up to that time, I'd been given more and more responsibility, more and more client contact, a lot of file responsibility, and I had no notion that this was coming whatsoever.
Debbie, you have one child. You are working now, and you have baby number 2 due sometime soon, I understand, and it looks like it should be pretty soon here. What is your situation? Do you know what's going to happen on your leave now?
Well, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I know that I'll be taking 6 weeks of leave, which will be partially paid because I have some accrued sick leave and some vacation time coming. But 2 weeks of that at least will be unpaid. And then after that, I'm in negotiations with my employer about what's going to happen.
What do you hope will happen?
Well, I hope that I'll be allowed to work part-time perhaps, or work what would be considered full-time but part of the time from my home. That's what I'm looking at, but we're talking.
Now, does your company have a policy? Have they clearly laid out something for you as an option?
Well, we have a company policy that would allow for 6 months of unpaid time off, 6 months of unpaid leave. I can't really afford to take 6 months unpaid. I can't really afford to take 6 weeks unpaid, so that's why I'm trying to work out a mutually beneficial kind of arrangement.
And how are things going so far?
Well, so far, things are going well. The last time when I took my maternity leave, the first time I took 11 weeks off, most of that was unpaid. Then I went back to work for 2 months on a part-time basis at part-time salary, and then I went back to work full-time after that. And that worked out well. What they did in my absence was hire someone to do my job, which is a different job than I have now, who has remained on with our company, has been promoted, and is running a division and is doing very well. So it was a creative kind of solution that worked. So that's what I'm hoping to come up with this time.
What is it like to be 8 months pregnant, the baby's arrival is only weeks away, and you still don't know what your future will be like with your job? Is that stressful?
Well, I suppose maybe a little bit. I try not to think about it too much because I'm really an optimist, and I feel like things will work. I have to make them work. So I have a husband who's supportive, and that helps too.
And a very supportive husband right here. Dave, let me ask you, you were able to take time off when your baby was born. Tell us, what did you do, and how did that work for you?
Well, I feel I've been very lucky. I've had a good experience. Lindsay, as you know, reporters work long and sometimes unpredictable hours. A year ago at this time, I was covering the Hormel meat packers strike. I was working a lot of nights and a lot of weekends. My wife was due with our baby. And I was afraid that the baby could get to be a year or two old before I ever saw him. One Friday night in January, my wife called me, Friday evening, called me at work and said, "Are you working late tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, it's going to be 10 or 11 again tonight." And she said, "Well, my contractions have started." And I said, "Okay, I'll try to be home by 8 or 9. I did get home a lot earlier than that, but as I said, I was afraid that the baby could be a year or two old before I ever was home to get to know him.
Now, what arrangements were you able to work out with the Minneapolis paper? They have a policy, is that right?
They have a more or less formal policy that allows either men or women to take time off. I think it's a written policy for women. And I simply wrote a memo to the editor that I work for outlining what I would like to do, and I was lucky again because he had just come back from a paternity leave of his own. There have been at least half a dozen or so reporters and editors at the paper who've taken between 6 weeks and 6 months.
What did you gain in that time off? What was the value to you?
Well, I was the youngest child in our family. I never spent time around kids when I was growing up. I knew nothing about babies, and so I was going into this situation with a certain amount of panic. So I was able to learn something about what it's like having a baby around and how to take care of the baby and have a lot of fun as well. I had a ball.
What kind of reaction did you get at work? Obviously, you weren't the first to be doing this, but was there some resentment? This means a bigger workload for somebody else when father or a new mother is taking time off, doesn't it?
Right, right. I was very lucky again there that I have a couple of colleagues in the business staff where I work who picked up most of the work that I was leaving, who just pitched in very well. If there was cynicism about it, I never heard about it, but I did have a bunch of people come up to me after I got back and saying, "How do I do it? How long did you take? How do I go about getting one too?"
Now, there is nothing in the Minnesota law that would require any employer to offer a parental leave, but there is discussion at the state legislature on that, and when we come back, we will be talking with two experts about that topic, the parental leave issue, and whether or not the state should be mandating what employers do in this area, right when we come back.
Without qualified machinists, our world would be a different place. There would be no cars, no buildings, no airplanes. At Anoka Votech, you can train to be a skilled production machinist. As a machinist, you will produce intricate metal parts for the machinery that helps keep America working. Call Anoka VTI at 427-1880 to start your career as a qualified machinist today.
Dream time for Wells Blue Bunny. In the land of fruit where everything's yummy, the freshest and sweetest, he grabs it by the bunch. He's dreaming up a flavor, the special this month.
Blue Bunny ice cream on blueberry cobbler. Make that blueberry cobbler in Blue Bunny ice cream. What a mouthful. Isn't that Blue Bunny the berries?
How to eat a Blue Bunny, no trick to it. Open up a carton, dig in, and do it. Wales, get your taste buds hopping.
GE dares you to put us to the test. Introducing Satisfaction Guaranteed. We'll give you 90 days to check out our major appliances right in your own home. Really work them over. And if you're not satisfied, we'll take them back. And Satisfaction Guaranteed is an addition to our warranties. Satisfaction Guaranteed. It's new from GE.
Where do you go when you need to talk with someone?
Or if you need some help or encouragement.
We all need to feel we're loved, that someone really cares about us.
If you're looking for new hope and have been waiting to hear some good news,
come and be a part of a family that cares about you. You'll find new hope, faith, and love at New Hope Baptist Church of South Minneapolis. Call us at 822-5537. 822-5537.
How many times has your partner said to you, "It's not what you say, it's the way that you say it," or "That's not what I meant at all"? What causes people to misunderstand each other when they try so hard to connect? It can go beyond the choice of words or the different accents. How you were raised and your cultural background can affect the way you talk and listen to others in ways that you may not even be aware of. If you or someone you know is in an intercultural relationship, perhaps of different ethnic backgrounds or different age groups or grew up in different parts of the country, we'd like to be able to hear from you. Now, Thursday, April 16th, we'll be finding out how our families and friends, while growing up, can affect our conversational style. Call 641-1298 to be possible guests on Twin Cities Live. By tracing your roots, you may discover the root of your communication differences. Joining us now, we have Nancy Johnson, who is the coordinator of Southside Child Care Committee and also is actively working for the parental leave bill here in the state legislature. And also joining us is Nancy Christensen, who works for the Minnesota Association of Commerce and Industry, or the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce and Industry now. They have recently changed their name. And Nancy is working as a lobbyist at the state capitol trying to defeat that bill. And Nancy Johnson, let me ask you, first of all, let's define this bill. What are we talking about here?
Well, the bill as it stands now would guarantee parents up to 6 months of leave. That means that either the mother or the father could work with the employer to try to work out a mutually acceptable leave, but they are guaranteed up to 6 months. It's also an unpaid leave, and it's also in recognition that this kind of leave would impact small businesses differently than it would impact large businesses. It only applies to businesses with 10 or fewer employees. That's the basic bill right now.
Applies to businesses with 10 or more employers.
Yeah, right.
You have to be a larger employer.
Exactly.
Sounds pretty simple, Nancy Christensen. What doesn't the association like about it?
Well, the problem is twofold in a sense. I think, first of all, it's the government reaching its long arm into the private sector or business and mandating what a fringe benefit has to be. And the problem with this is that it mandates a certain period of time that's going to make it very, very difficult for some employers, especially small employers, to be able to conduct their business, having to fill that job on a temporary basis and then have the other employee come back. The other thing is that it mandates that that job be held open for that employee. And again, that's extremely difficult to do. In a larger corporation, it may be merged, it may be downsized, the job may be gone. How can they absolutely guarantee that that same job is going to be back? So what it does is hamper the flexibility of the employer to be able to operate the business. Now, this is not to say that the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce and Industry is against parental leave. I want you and the audience and the guests to know that I'm a mother of 3, so my credentials are intact and I know all of the ramifications of this. We would support that companies, pay attention to this as an employee need and that this be spelled out in personnel policies. What we do disagree with is that the government mandates the amount of time and mandates that an employer has to hold that job open. That's the issue.
Yeah, and one thing I want to clarify is that it's not the same job. It's a job of equal responsibility and pay, first of all, so that does allow a fair amount of flexibility. Secondly, the Catalyst organization in New York did a survey of corporations throughout the country, and they found that 90% of the corporations who do have a maternity leave policy in place and changed that policy within the last 5 years in order to come into compliance with the law, did so only because of the changes in the Pregnancy Disability Act. In other words, those companies were not responding to the overwhelming changes in women in the workforce. They weren't really responding out of a concern for the infants of those families. They were responding because there was a law that said you cannot discriminate. If you give medical disability to men, you cannot discriminate against pregnant women.
What about that issue here that the purpose of this, she's arguing that you need this bill because government needs to force the hand of industry or they will not respond.
Right. I don't think that's completely true. The Pregnancy Disability Act is a federal act amended on the Civil Rights Act in 1978, and all it says is that if you're an employer and you are offering health care or temporary disability insurance, that pregnancy is covered under that. And so that means that women who are bearing children will have that kind of protection under health insurance and disability insurance. And it's a recognition of that particular need in law, but they didn't mandate that you have to give parental leave, and that's the significant issue here.
Right, and one thing that makes that different, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to make the point. I mean, obviously it is happening at some places here in the Twin Cities. There is a policy of some kind where Dave works that allowed him to be able to take some time off here. How many companies, can either of you address this question, how many companies, how common is it here in the Twin Cities for there to be some kind of a parental leave policy, not maternity leave, but leave for both parents?
Well, I'm surprised that you said that so many men have taken leaves where you work, because actually our experience is that even though some of the larger companies in the Twin Cities do have parental leave policies, that is, a man can take leave, commonly they don't write those policies. Those policies are not given to employees. So employees, first of all, are not aware that there is that possibility. And secondly, a lot of men are still in the culture that says that this is not an okay thing to do. You're not committed to your employer if you want to take a short leave time.
But the law isn't going to change the culture. If the law says that either parent can take 6 weeks of leave, I think we can assume that most people who will be taking advantage of that law will be women, which brings up another issue then of women opening themselves up to possible discrimination in the workforce. If you're an employer and a small employer, and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 qualified applicants for a job, some of whom are men, some of whom are young women, some of whom are older women, and you know that you have a key position that's not flexible, let's say like a computer operator or something like that, that would be difficult to fill. If you were an employer, what would you do if you had 3 or 4 well-qualified candidates? I fear that a law such as this is going to have a backlash against women in terms of discrimination, and small employers will tell you that that's true.
Your question. I'd be interested to know more about the cost of families of not having parental leave available.
Yeah, I can speak to that. That right now we see in where I work, we do choosing quality child care workshops through the Child Care Resource Center. And as new parents are sitting there listening to all the different things that they need to know in order to choose care for their infants, first of all, they find out the lack of infant care. There's a severe lack of infant care in the metropolitan area and even throughout the entire state. Then they have to look at all of the other different variables in trying to find infant care. And often we'll look up and one of the moms will have tears in her eyes and she'll say, I'm just not ready. I don't want to leave this little infant yet. And that is very in connection with research that shows that the first 4 to 6 months are a very critical age in terms of the infant, not just bonding, that word gets used a lot, but it's in setting patterns of intimacy. It's in setting those patterns, that the cues that the mother and the father need to be able to pick up from that baby. And
Teresa,
that needs time.
Teresa, Nan, and Debbie, let me ask the 3 of you. You are all of childbearing age. You are in the workforce or have been in the workforce. If this kind of a bill passes, do you feel that employers may take one look at you and say, oh, could be a parental leave request coming down the line here. Maybe I better not hire this person?
I think that's patently ridiculous. That's talking to a large portion of the workforce from age 18 to age 45 of women and saying, we're not going to hire any of you because you might go out and get pregnant. That's not the way business works. Where are they going to find secretaries? Where are they going to find staff members who do the typical kinds of work that women do? Women will be hired. Women didn't get shut out of the workplace because maternal care became one of the fringe benefits of working if you had medical leave. We're not going to say to a good third of the population, sorry, because you have the possibility of becoming pregnant, you're no longer employable.
They
That's
won't
patently
say that.
ridiculous.
They're not going to say that. And that isn't what I said. I said if you were an employer and you had a pool of well-qualified candidates for a particular position, and you had a choice of who to hire, and one of those persons might be a younger person, I think that you can assume that an employer would not take a chance if that employer felt that in a critical or key position, he was going to lose that employer for 6 months.
Man or woman, actually.
Man or woman.
The parental leave bill.
But in actuality, the way our culture is, still, it's going to be the women who would take advantage of that. And I think women ought to be extremely careful.
I think what you're saying,
is valid, that there might be some discrimination, but that helps to cloud the issue rather than to make it more clear. And women aren't having 8 and 9 children. You know, the average woman is in the workforce for 35 years, and she's going to have maybe 2 children or maybe 3, which means that, you know, she's going to be on leave for possibly a year. And I think your story, the attorney, that is more common than you'd ever believe. And if women cannot have any protection, we need this as protection. We need to have our jobs protected.
The other thing is you need to look at your assumption that there will be a pool of workers. And I think that's not a valid assumption at this point, because all the demographics show that the pool of workers is going to be going down in the 1990s, and women are in the workforce in bigger and bigger numbers. In other words,
but
we're
they're
not
also
going away.
clustered in the lower paying jobs, and they're also clustered in jobs where they can work part-time and move easily in and out of the job market. And so in that case, you're going to have younger people who are entering the job market and women who want the flexibility maybe of part-time jobs being clustered in those particular positions. But women who want to maybe be professionals and who are working towards managerial jobs and those kinds of things may find their positions discriminated against. I would assume that if you have someone who's a data processor and there's a large pool of those kinds of people, this kind of a law isn't going to affect anyone too much. But it will for other managerial kinds of jobs. Please make no mistake about it, it's true.
I don't think that's really true, though, either, because in my case, I was in sort of a real low management position before I had my first child. I had the baby, took, you know, quite a leave, almost the whole summer off, came back, and then I got promoted. And now it's, you know, the same thing is happening again.
But when we want those
good employees.
No, but what's really
We're
good
going to
about...
just take one break here. Obviously, some people who have strong opinions about this. This conversation is going to continue, I promise, right after this.
Our Grand Slam Cellathon 800 is in full swing here at Towsley Subaru. Because we over-ordered in the first place and then had such a mild winter, we're way overstocked with four-wheel drive Subarus. Over 100 3-doors, 4-doors, wagons, pickups, and XT coupes. Our mistake is your gain. Cellathon prices are plainly marked, extra finance people on duty, and all vehicles are ready for delivery. We'll have you on your way in a hurry. Open late every night this month for Grand Slam Cellathon 800 savings at Towsley Subaru, corner of North Highway 61 and I-694.
Come, exercise, lose inches, and feel better at Easy Trim and Fitness Centers. Their tables are designed to stretch and flex your muscles while toning and firming every area of your body, like stomach, hips, and buttocks. Easy Trim features concepts and motion tables for men and women of all ages, even for those with physical limitations. A 1-hour session can have all the benefits of hours of strenuous floor exercises. Visit Easy Trim as often as you'd like. There's no membership fee. Call now to arrange a free demonstration at the Easy Trim and Fitness Center in either Blaine, Cambridge, or Pine City.
Dandy, light and lively six-pack. Snack it, smack it, back it, pack it, tuck one in your jacket.
Yogurt lovers, you'll love the money-saving six-pack of light and lively low-fat yogurt. So smooth, creamy, fruity, and delicious.
So stock a sack, get the knack of the handy-dandy, light and lively six-pack.
I bought my TV at Best Buy because of the 125% lifetime price guarantee, no matter how long
I own my VCR. If I ever find it on sale for less, Best Buy will refund
the difference between the lower price and what I paid for my stereo, plus 25% of the difference.
It really gives me confidence in a major appliance purchase to know I got the lowest price in town from Best Buy. For life.
Lowest prices, guaranteed for life, at Best Buy Superstores.
Okay, so you're pregnant. You know your waistline will increase, but how can you keep the rest of your body in shape? How can you control your weight gain at a time when it can really get out of hand? Well, come on down Friday, April 10th, that's this Friday, and we will show you how. Put on your maternity sweatsuits and take part in a medically approved exercise program for mothers-to-be. Reduce those painful quirks of pregnancy, the calf cramps, the back pain, the fatigue, while increasing your muscle tone and energy. And it doesn't just stop there. If you have just had a baby, you may be still feeling those conditions and also want to tone up just a little bit. You will want to come down too. Call 641-1298 for free tickets to Twin Cities Live this Friday when we do special shape-ups for those 9 months and more. are back, and right off the bat, we are going to be taking a phone call. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say I'm opposed also to legislating, forcing employers to hold positions of up to 6 months. We hear so much about the rights of mothers and fathers, and we are told that they should be given the right to take off from work to be with their new children for a period of up to 6 months. I am also a mother, but I am feeling also for the single men and women who are being discriminated against, who would not be getting comparable time off. We are being programmed to think that the married mothers and fathers should be given their rights. Also, the employers are being discriminated against by having to hold the positions for the parents unless they agree to it. They still have to hire a replacement and train them and possibly let them go at the whim of the parent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. She makes a strong point. And Debbie, let me ask you this. First of all, do you think the legislature should pass this bill? Should the government be telling employers what they can do?
Well, I'm in favor of the bill. In fact, I'm the state legislative chairman for the Minnesota Federation of Business and Professional Women. We're an international federation, but here in the state of Minnesota, we're working on getting this bill as part of our legislative platform. Our national federation does support parental leave legislation, so I'm in favor of it.
We have another person who is joining us here this morning. The list just keeps growing, but this is everybody that's going to be here today. Rhonda Cohen, who joins us from California, and she is a child care expert. She teaches on the subject. She is also working for a major employer in California, and that company is doing extensive things to try and help the employees return to work and to make it work successfully. And Rhonda, I want you to draw off of your experiences and tell us how far do companies need to be going in this area, and how far should they be going? Is this a right that employees have to get protection when they return to work?
Well, you know, I'm talking from two places. One is a mother who went to work and had to handle this with no support from anyone as far as companies or available child care at that time, to working in a corporation at this particular time. I think companies need to do something for parents who want to have children. It's not easy on either side, but there certainly are solutions. I work at Transamerica Life Insurance Company in Los Angeles, and we have worked out a program where, as a child care expert, I work with parents when they are pregnant. I help them figure out how they are going to work, be able to eat the proper nutrition.
And you really sit down and you go through the whole bit with employees. There aren't many companies that do anything like that.
I don't think there's anybody in the United States yet that I found who does this. I'm hoping that this is going to change drastically. I also work with parents, or particularly mothers, who want to breastfeed and return back to work. Where we need to help people is making the transition from being out on maternity leave and come back into work and make that transition smoother.
I think employers, though, are beginning to realize that, you know, they have employees. Employers want employees to be happy and to be productive members of the workforce. Some of our major corporations not only have personal leave policies in place, but they also have people, child care specialists on their staff, so that if there's two working parents and a child is sick, they will pick up part of the cost of having that person go into the home and take care of it. So it's not that they're not, you know, that these things aren't being worked out in the workforce. I think Debbie's example is just an extremely fine example of what happens between an employer and employee. Rather than having the government say that that employer has to give her 6 months off, she is working it out with her employer to find out how both her needs can be met and how the needs of the employer can be met. And it's that flexibility that employers need in order to maintain a viable job. The best kind of parental benefits any of us can have are jobs in the workforce that we can go to.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I have to respond to that too, because Debbie's in a managerial position. And I work with people who are clerks, secretaries, and don't have quite the clout or power that you might have to,
or negotiation skills.
to be able to go after this and do this. And there has to be somebody to help other people who can't do this for themselves.
Yeah, I was really lucky, and I have to, you know, there are 57% of the companies, according to a survey that the Minnesota House Research Department did, 57% of companies in the state don't have any provision at all for any leave of any kind.
Parental or maternity leave.
Right.
But
And
so that even the 6-week disability that is fairly common at companies that do provide disability benefits does not exist at that large percentage of
But
companies.
because it's not a formally written policy doesn't mean that these things aren't going to be worked out with employees. You have to remember that employers are competing for good people in the workforce. And if they can't give them the kind of benefits or salary they need, there's nothing to preclude anybody from walking out of that business and finding a job with benefits that are more suitable to that person.
Squeeze your question in.
I wanted to set this into a larger context. I know that 100 other countries in this world have parental leave, and the United States is one of the only industrialized countries that doesn't. And we hear a lot about competition, and I wanted to know whether anybody knew about other states and the national legislation, whether they're doing parental leave like Minnesota is.
Somebody want to address that?
California. There are. Well, there are 5 states that currently have mandated disability leave throughout for all the workers in that state. So that means that the women in those states do have maternity leave covered under disability leave. However, that doesn't include parental leave. And there are 12 states currently in their legislatures dealing with parental leave. So it's not as if Minnesota will be out front there all by themselves.
Well, it depends on whether it's passed in those states or not. Minnesota always tends to be number one. So.
Well, not in this case. Actually, there are...
We should point out for people that the bill currently in the legislature, it's not the first year it's been introduced, but it is the first year that it has gotten to a floor of either chamber for consideration, and it is now pending on the House floor in the Minnesota legislature. We have a caller. Go ahead, caller.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, actually, my comment is I went into premature labor with my second child, and I was working for an investment firm. And I was allowed 6 weeks medical disability, but it included everything but maternity, and they fired me. And I'd only been with the company for maybe 8 months, so it had clearly stated in their handbook if you were with them less than a year, you weren't entitled to any of these.
This is a very difficult question, too. I think part of what you're asking about is when you have the unexpected happen to you in your pregnancy, a premature delivery, a baby that has special needs, how all of those things should be addressed. And Ronna, let me ask you, what are some things that companies should keep in mind?
I can give you some very specific examples of what has happened in our company. I'm thinking of one particular woman who had her baby 6 weeks early, C-section. The baby was not, didn't weigh at least 6 pounds at the end of 6 weeks to come back to work. This woman could not afford to stay home for any specific time. She was able to receive disability until the baby was 8 weeks of age. I went to employee relations. They figured out a way for her to come back part-time. She did not have to come off of her maternity leave benefits because if she did, she lost her health insurance. And you don't want to lose your health insurance if you have a sick, preemie baby. She stayed at work part-time for several months, then came back on full-time. I saw her recently. Her baby's 8 months old, is doing incredibly well. And there's a success story.
How are things going for her at work?
Very well. Now, one of the things that happens when you have a special need baby or preemie baby, there seems to be a gap for what will be covered. The mother is covered only for a period of time, but if the baby is ill, right at this moment, there's nothing to cover her for her to stay home. And what do you do when you have a sick baby, you have preemies, you have multiple births, and those children are not heavy enough to place them into a child care center? You don't have the money to spend approximately $100 to $125 per week to bring somebody into your home, and it's really a difficult situation. If you can keep the mother home and pay her part of the time and let her stay home a little bit longer without pay, that certainly helps that woman.
Okay. Well, it doesn't just help that woman, though.
It helps the baby.
It helps the children. We're losing sight of the fact that we're talking about children. We're talking about government being involved with children. Government is already involved with children. Single people pay taxes to educate our children. Married women can't take IRA deductions if their husbands have a pension. We already treat people differently because of their marital status. I think we have to get away from the marital status issue. We're talking about children and protecting them. The story's still not in on the problems with children whose parents go back to work, whose mothers or who their primary caretaker goes back to work within two weeks.
When we come back, I encourage these people all to speak up, and they are doing such a great job. But when we come back, we are going to talk about that very tough issue of being both a good employee and a good parent.
They grow up so fast. That pretty smile will be different before you know it. So get it while it lasts and save $5 on your $14.95 package. Check the ad in this week's paper. You'll get 20 portraits, 15 wallets, 3 5x7s, and 2 8x10s for just $9.95. That pretty smile will be different before you know it. So get it while it lasts.
Tuesday through Saturday at Minneapolis area Kmart's.
I'm a big potato guy, so naturally I love the big potato taste of Idaho potatoes. Who doesn't? But until you dig into one, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between an Idaho potato and a potato from someplace else. That's why the Idaho people came up with this, the Grown in Idaho seal. It says you're getting the big potato taste of Idaho and nothing else. The Idaho potato seal, the Idaho potato. Clever people, these Idahoans.
Genuine Idaho potatoes are available at super value.
Budget Power, the home improvement expert, brings you store-wide savings during the spring fix-up sale. Save on GE Miser floodlight bulbs. Spreads 150 watts of light for the cost of only 120 watts. Brighten your bath with decorative toilet seats from Mayfair in a rainbow of colors and design. American Bath's elegant and decorative faucets are on sale, featuring brass, porcelain, cut crystal, and solid wood handles. The night comes alive with the warm glow of low-voltage accent lighting from Lunalight by Toro. Save more during the spring fix-up sale at Budget Power, the home improvement expert.
I wish Grandpa was here. Wonder why he had to see the doctor.
Hey, been doing any fishing this year, Phil?
You bet. At Group Health, we believe in taking care of little things before they become big things. And you'll get the finest personal attention from your own doctor.
Everything's okay. We caught it in time.
Hey, pal, how'd they bite?
Grandpa!
Group Health. Healthcare with humanity.
See what a new study says about diet and breast cancer.
Plus opening night highlights, live traffic reports, and the weather tomorrow on Eyewitness News Morning at 6.
Can you be both a good parent and also a good employee? It's a difficult balance for the men and the women. And Dave, I'd like you to relate to us some of your experiences. You have, it sounds like, really shared many of the responsibilities with your wife. Do you find yourself going in bleary-eyed to work and just trying to get through the day some days because of the parenting problems?
Well, Alexander got us up at 6 this morning, so there are days when we're a little bleary-eyed. But to be fair, since I've gone back to work, to be fair to my wife, she's picked up a lot more of the burden of taking care of him than I have. But I think the fact that I was able to take a leave early on, get well acquainted with him, get a certain amount of confidence about taking care of him, and get a little faster and a little more capable at taking care of him, has smoothed the path a little bit since then.
Let me ask you, you are an employer. What do you think about the conversation here, whether the government should be mandating these things, how far the businesses should be going in providing things for employees?
Well, I think the difference between all of us as people, everybody has a different story, and I think to weigh the very good with the very bad, somewhere down the middle there's an acceptable plan for everybody. The big employers can afford specialists and have the budgets. I wrestle a very tight budget in a small company. If one of my best employees came to me and said, gee, I'm going to have a baby, I'd be very happy because I just had a baby and I'm just ecstatic. Yes.
But then are you sitting there thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do when they walk out the door?
No, I guess I'm the new culture, the younger generation that would bend over backwards to make sure that they could...
And all of these women want to come and work for you, and they're going to be, you hope they'll be taking the application.
I'm tough, though. But I think the key there is, though, as was pointed out, is change. We are going through culture, and in 30, 40 years, we'll have a whole new set of values on how we look at this issue.
Do you think that's the case? Let me ask each of you at the end here. Do you think that's the case 30, 40 years from now? We may work all of this out, but not today or tomorrow.
Oh, I think it's coming faster than that, than 30 or 40 years. I think it's being worked out right now. You know, the reason that we're even talking about this is that the women's participation in the workforce is, you know, double over the past 15 years. Leslie, could I speak about what she said about the foreign countries and having mandated leave? Most of those countries also pay, you know, the maternity leave. So now when you're thinking about that, you're talking about huge costs. A lot of the European countries, let's say, will pay a certain amount of money for a certain amount of leave and then allow more time off. What they're finding out is after that, the money stops, the people are going back to work because they simply can't afford to take on paid leave. And this is why the bill that's before the State House is called the Yuppie bill. I mean, so what? Tell them they can take off 2 years. It's not going to affect me. I need the job.
Except that I work with low-income parents, and this is a very, very big concern of theirs because if you're low income, you can't afford to lose that job. You can't afford to be out in the job market hunting for a job for 2, 3, 4, 6 months. You need to know that even though you can only afford to maybe take 2 months instead of 6 months, that 2 months is a guaranteed time for you. And it's a very big issue among low-income parents.
Go ahead with your question.
It's not a question, it's an experience. I'm a bartender at the airport, and I was given 6 months leave. I chose to nurse my baby. I could not wean him. I was advised never to give him a bottle. When it came time for me to go back to work, I had a baby that couldn't be fed other than by me.
What'd you do?
I went to my doctor. I got a written excuse from him. I talked to the union. They advised me that they'd stand behind me. I went to my employer with my little boy and didn't need anything. He granted me another 6 months.
So another positive experience. They do exist out there.
I was going to say, too, in our company, this has been worked out because I have arranged to have an electric breast pump in-house. And we have this up in employee health. And our women who come back to work who want to continue to breastfeed have a schedule, and they go up to this room, and they go in and they pump out their breast, and they keep their milk at their desk in their little ice chest, and they take it home, and they drop it off at the sitter, and the baby has the milk for the next day. I had 2 women whose children could not have anything else but breast milk. If we did not have the electric pump there, those women would have had to quit work. Both of their babies are at least a year old now and doing well. This can be done in any company. The thing is, though, that yes, some employees, higher management will go along with this, but a lot of times they are men. They are married, they have women who stay home and take care of the children, so they don't perceive what it is that a woman needs to have. And it requires women and men, I want you to know, it's just not a women's issue here, to stand up and put pressure on the employee to figure out how this can be done. And it can be done with very little money and high results.
I'd like to address 2 questions. First of all, to Nancy Johnson. I myself have been interested in the bill that's going through. Right now, it just passed the House committee. Now it's going to go to the full House. And I wanted to emphasize some of the other provisions in the bill, and maybe Nancy could address that, one being the sick time that you can take off. And also to Nancy, the other Nancy, I would like to ask you, don't you think that you're talking about discriminating against women? Don't you think that this parental leave bill can work in the opposite way than you mentioned? If more women were able to go back to their management position jobs, don't you think that we would, as women, rise in the workforce and be able to have these management jobs instead of more women quitting because they need to take care of their children and remaining in the lower levels?
Well, do you want to do the sick one first? Or?
Go ahead and let's just quickly address that and then move on.
Because this is another tremendous problem. And along with parental leave, it's a place where the bill is trying to give a modest accommodation to parenthood. We're not talking about a paid benefit here. We're not talking about adding a huge expense. What we're talking about is with the unpaid leave That's for the parenting. With the sick provision of the bill, what that means is that if the employer currently has sick days, that the parent could use their sick days that are already allotted to take care of their sick child. And it's a tremendous problem. You don't want to leave your sick child with a stranger. You don't want to have to bundle them up and take them out to a sick child care center. They're very expensive. It's extremely expensive to hire someone to come into your home to take care of your child when they're sick.
Nancy Christensen.
Right.
I don't think, you know, I think the real issue here is whether it should be mandated or worked out in the workforce. And what I might respond to you in terms of women, we're talking here about the hiring. If you have mandated policy, you know, I'm saying now women are moving up the ladder. I mean, they're not in the higher echelons, and it's taken many, many years to get up there, mainly because they've been treated on an equal basis with men in terms of not giving them any more benefits than anybody else. But if you come in as the government and say you must give any person who's a parent 6 months leave and have that job back, then all of a sudden you're making it much more difficult for that woman. I mean, because the employer is just going to have to look at it. Not so much maybe in the larger corporations, but in the smaller ones. And I have to tell you that this is what our smaller members are saying. They said to me, it's going to be so difficult. I'll hire an older woman for that job.
But they may not have that option.
A difficult topic, and we will continue our conversation right after this.
Nobody does your look great clips like we do. We do a look that's right for you. Great clips, that's right. Nobody does you like we do. Great styling, great clips.
It only looks expensive.
Nobody does you like we do.
Can I have you? And a white living room, too. Something updated. A little more like me. New sofa. Pastel oriental. Glass, brass. Oh, but how will that look with antiques? Probably perfect.
Ethan Allen, for the interiors of your mind.
Delicious Breyers Ice Cream presents The Color Test. What's the real color of mint chocolate chip ice cream? Green or white? White. Some use artificial color, and that's not all they add. But Breyers uses only milk, cream, sugar, chocolate chips, and peppermint. Still want green? Buy Breyers and wear these.
Breyers all-natural ice cream. Nothing but pure enjoyment.
Here's an important message for young men and young women. If you recently graduated or soon will, if you're unemployed or underemployed, if you're just looking for a change, Rasmussen Business College can show lots of new directions for your career. Choose the world of business, the computer industry, the secretarial field, court reporting, or the travel industry. Classes are starting this month, so call Rasmussen Business College now, 292-1143, in Minneapolis or St. Paul.
Child abuse is one of the most major problems to be brought out in the open in recent years. But with all of the attention, why has it risen 55% in 4 years? We will try to find out this next Thursday on Twin Cities Live when we ask the parents themselves why they would abuse their own child. Call 641-1298 for free tickets as we honor National Child Abuse Prevention Month and attempt to put a stop to this drastic crime. We will hear from members of Parents Anonymous, which is a program designed for treatment, intervention, and prevention. In other words, to save lives and to save families. Again, that's next Thursday on Twin Cities Live.
There's a thought that says it is indeed fortunate to have one's cup runneth over. Fortunate. Unless your cup runneth over onto your silk blouse, your fine linen tablecloth, your wool slabs, whatever, wherever, which is precisely why we make Scotch Guard Fabric Protector. It keeps ordinary spills from becoming extraordinary stains on virtually any fabric. Use Scotch Guard Fabric Protector and let your cup runneth over.
Worldwide sponsor, 1988 Olympic Games.
I'm Steve Edelman.
I thought you were Max Headroom.
You thought I was Max Headroom? What made you think I was Max?
The hairdo.
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I should be Max Headroom. The guy just, you know, he has it.
He's got charisma.
It's something special.
As a matter of fact, we're going to meet him coming up on, Tuesday's show. We're going to meet him.
I forgot the name of our show.
No, here's what he really looks like.
And her. Asking is just polite demanding.
Join us at 3 for Good Company.
Mr. Big Stuff.
Introducing Oreo Big Stuff.
Who do you think you are? Oreo Big Stuff. Oreo Big Stuff. Who do you think you are?
New Oreo Big Stuff. More chocolate, more cream.
You're big and satisfying, taking you with me all the time. Oreo Big Stuff. Looks like you're gonna go far. Oreo Big Stuff. Oreo Big Stuff. Who do you think you are? The Bisco.
He's a doctor of optometry here at the Eye Works. First step in the glasses fast, glasses right promise. Thanks, Steve. This little piece of paper is my prescription for a new pair of glasses. Now, here's the really fast part. The lab's right here in the Eye Works with the specially trained technicians and all the latest equipment. They can make my glasses in an hour. You can stay and watch if you want. The new me. That fast.
The Eye Works. Glasses fast, glasses right. Call for an exam or bring in your prescription.
Nan, somebody here was just asking me, what about the woman who lost her job? Has she got another one? What are you doing now?
I'm in private practice. One reason I went into private practice is that I looked around at what was going to be available for me in the workplace. And I would be dealing over and over again with the same kinds of issues as far as being a parent and being an employee.
You had a second child.
I have a
and
second
how much
child.
time did you take off from your own business with the second child?
When I was home 4 weeks before the baby was born, in bed, on the telephone, with my dictaphone and my briefcase. I took 2 weeks off after the baby was born. Then I went back into the office with my baby.
And does that not maybe make the point that Nancy is saying here, that small employers cannot afford this kind of a leave policy, and even medium-sized companies?
Well, I don't know. I worked when I have 2 children, and my second child was born when I worked for a small print shop. And we actually found that it worked out for me to take a leave. I took 3 months off and then came back and worked part-time 6 months. But we also experienced the frustration of being a small employer competing with other small employers who were not doing that, so that this would make the load more equitable throughout the industry.
But she makes my case. What she says is that she worked it out with her employers so that the needs of the company could be met and her private needs could be met at all. But if the legislature were to mandate that she gets 6 months off, then it throws the whole thing into a totally different ballgame.
No, actually, I want this is Nan's job and Nan's leave. So Nan,
there's another point here. I happen to be married. My husband could have spent the last 2 weeks home with my children who had chicken pox if he had parental leave, and I, who am a sole employer and a sole practitioner, could have been at my job, while he is in a larger firm that could have covered for him.
I'd like to address the disability issue. My employer gives me 6 weeks. They also give me an extra 6 weeks with the doctor's excuse. I could not get a doctor's excuse for an extra 6 weeks because 3 doctors said, you won't have a disability after 6 weeks, you don't need one. So the government has to do something because no one else will.
Yeah. The other thing is, it's not a disability issue. I really want to speak for, I think someone else already raised it, that this is an issue that affects infants. Infants, first of all, are different from even older kids, from 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds whose needs are different. Infants need consistent, stable care. They need somebody who is really keyed into their cues, and it's a short period of time. Someone else mentioned today that if you're in the workforce for 35 years, and some predictions say that it's going to be even longer as our lifetimes are lengthened, that to take a leave is a small, small part of that commitment to your work life. And what we found in the Twin Cities, several different large corporations in the Twin Cities who have very liberal leaves, up to 6 months, have found that women do take their jobs seriously.
Hotel accommodations and dining provided by the Radisson University Hotel, 615 Washington Avenue Southeast on the University of Minnesota East Bank campus. Henderson chauffeured Cadillacs provide limousine transportation for the guest of Twin Cities Live. Henderson's offers the largest selection of color, style, and service in the 5-state area. Bob Bruce's wardrobe is provided by Justers. Hair and makeup provided by Take 5, 504 North 1st Avenue in the Butler Building.
Your baby is going to be due in June. What are you going to do?
Well, right now I'm planning on taking off about 3 months pregnancy leave, and I sometimes I wish I can take up to 6 months, but nowadays everything costs so much, and it really frustrates me as to why the government is so unsure about themselves and so frustrated with employees mandating or wanting to take off a mandation of 6 months maternity leave when a lot of us can't even afford to even take off the time that we can. And I was just trying to address this to Nancy Christensen because it's really...
Pay less, Shoe Source. You could pay more. But why?
Song sung blue, everybody knows one.
This is FM 94.